Hi everyone, it's Kelly here. Thanks for stopping by. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Glad to have you. Thanks for coming. Today we're going to be talking TBR. So we are looking at the books that I am planning on reading in October. Now I'm recording this on the 7th of October, so we're a little way already into the month, and I have actually finished a book that I started, I think, back in August. So I'll talk more about that when I do my October wrap up. But we are one book down for October. So I might actually just leave that one out. It was an audiobook that I had been reading that I wasn't super keen on. We'll talk about it when we come to do the October wrap up. But this is the TBR video. So this is what I want to read. And I have had to kind of do a bit of planning, and I'm trying to think ahead to the end of the year and what I want to have achieved. So to talk to you about that, because this is my first TBR that I've recorded, I want to go back a little bit I want to go back to the beginning of the year and just kind of give you a very brief overview of the goals I set for myself, and also the challenges that I signed up for at the beginning of this year. Subsequently, I've added some more on, but we will talk about those maybe in another video because they're more ongoing challenges rather than year-specific challenges. So going back to my goals from the beginning of this year, what I really wanted to achieve this year was to read more classic books, which I can tick off my list because yes, I have done that. I've read far more classic books this year than I've ever read before, which is really exciting to me. My other goal was to read more audiobooks. So again, tick, I have read a lot of audiobooks this year, so I'm really happy that I have achieved my overall goals. But the reason that I've been able to do that is because I got organized at the beginning of this year. So in previous years, I've only ever set myself just a reading goal, like a number of books that I wanted to read by the end of the year. And I have managed to achieve those goals all years, if not all, most years. Because I push. I'm a good pusher at the end kind of gal, where I go, okay, I've got to read 5 books. I've got a month. Let's go. And I'm just read, achieve goal. So I didn't want to do that this year because I had more specific goals in mind in terms of what I wanted to actually be inputting into my brain, not just picking things that sort of looked good at the time, although I've done a bit of that too this year. I wanted to also be more mindful about what I was reading, wanting to read more classics for one. Also, when I was trying to diversify what I've been reading, so I've been trying to read books that were written in other countries, books by First Nations authors, books in translation, that kind of thing, because I really wanted to kind of expand my mind and to be inputting things into my mind that are like making me hopefully a better person, a more aware person. So that has been my overall goal in making these decisions to join particular challenges and also to pick up particular books. So the challenges that I chose this year, I found on the Storygraph. If you're not already on the Storygraph, I highly recommend it. It's such a good social book platform where you can find recommendations, you can track your reading, you get lots of like data that you can analyze. There are graphs and all sorts of things. So it's a great site for doing that. There's now an app because it was when I started on the Storygraph, it was in beta, but now it's, I think, properly published as a website and also as an app. So and everything talks to everything. So it's really great. I'm still also on Goodreads as well, so I will include my links to both Goodreads and to the Storygraph in my description if you want to follow me on either of those platforms. But yeah, I really do like the Storygraph, and I think eventually I will migrate completely over to it. But it's just that some of my friends are still on Goodreads, and I still enjoy kind of interacting with them about the books they're reading, seeing what other people are reading and that sort of thing that are my friends. So if I can convince more of my friends to come across to the Storygraph, then I'll stop doing both at the same time. But at the moment, I'm updating both in parallel, which is probably a bit mad. But anyway, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so where were we? We were talking about my goals. So I found these challenges that I'm going to mention to you on the Storygraph in the challenges section. So you can just search for the names of them if you are keen to have a look. As they're timed, as in they're to finish at the end of this year, probably don't sign up for fall. That would be quite a challenge. I signed up for these at the beginning of this year, and so far I have done really, really well. I'm almost done with them, but let me tell you what they are. So my challenges for this year are While I Was Reading 2021, The Modern Mrs. Darcy 2021 Learn New Things, the 2021 Reading Classic Books Challenge, and 1921 in 2021 a Centennial Challenge, which is a really interesting one, where it's only 5 books, but you're reading books that were published 100 years ago. And that has been super fascinating. And I probably will make an entire video about that particular challenge when I finish it. 1 book to go. Okay, so I am actually almost done with all of my challenges. Most of them only have 1 book to go. The Classic Books Challenge has 3 books to go, but 2 of those prompts are for the same book. And that book is also a prompt for one of my other challenges. So work smarter, not harder. And that book is this one, Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. So it's I would consider this a modern classic. It's not a classic. It was only written back in, I think, 2008. Oh no, sorry, 2003 it was written, but still, that's not super old. It's kind of old, but not super old. Hello, Xanthi, welcome. Okay, so Kafka on the Shore, I didn't know much about other than knowing that it's popular and that people love it, and that it's a bit kooky. So that's all I know. I've never read Murakami before. I also own Norwegian Wood, which I will try and get to, I think, next year. But yeah, I'm starting with Kafka on the Shore because it is hitting my, while I was reading 2021, magical realism prompt, as well as being my prompt for, so hitting 2 prompts in the Classic Books Challenge, which is a book that is over 500 pages. It's 505 pages, guys. I am pretty chuffed that I've been able to find a book that is literally just over 500 pages. And also it is a book in translation, which interestingly, when I was, because I would like to tell you who the translator is if I'm reading a translated book. So when I was looking, it just says copyright Haruki Murakami 2003, English translation copyright Haruki Murakami 2005. So it sounds like he's actually just translated his own book, which I think is pretty cool, to be the translator of your own book, because you can kind of, you know what you meant when you said the thing. So it's not reliant on somebody else. So that's a really interesting thing. I've not come across a book that's been translated by the original author. So self-translated from the original, which was in Japanese, of course. So I'm really keen to read this, and I hadn't kind of looked more into this until preparing for this video. I read the blurb and it sounds really interesting, so I'm super keen to get into this book. It definitely sounds quirky. I'll read a little bit of it to you. Kafka Tamura runs away from home at 15 under the shadow of his father's dark prophecy. The aging Nakata, tracker of lost cats, who never recovered from a bizarre childhood affliction, finds his pleasantly simplified life suddenly turned upside down. As their parallel odysseys unravel, cats converse with people, fish tumble from the sky, etc., etc. It just gets weird, basically. So I'm keen to get into this because I haven't read Murakami before, as I said, and it just sounds super interesting. So that is book number 1. I am definitely going to try and read this one in October. Another book, I'm going to just go through all of the books I need to read before the end of the year. I might not get to all of them in October, but just so you know, and it keeps me accountable. Yeah, so I'm going to just go through what I'm going to read. So this one I'm not planning to read in October. If I get to it, that'd be great, but I'm not planning for it. November, I think. But this one is The Overstory by Richard Powers. Now, this is for the Modern Mrs. Darcy 2021 Learn New Things Challenge for the prompt Pulitzer Prize National Book Award winner. And I toyed with the idea of switching this out for a book that's shorter because this book is 625 pages, I think. So it's a lot. I don't tend to read books that long for the most part. I kind of hover between maybe 200 and 350 pages for most of the books that I read, which I know because of the story graph. So because it will tell you exactly the length of book that you normally read. So I'm more of a 300 page kind of gal, and this one is double that. So I toyed with the idea of switching it out. However, earlier this year, I purchased for myself a book journal, and I will link below where I got this if you're interested in it. It's the Modern Classic Reading Journal by Stella Bookish Art, and I got it on Etsy. So I didn't get this at the beginning of the year. So the first 2 months I didn't fill out properly. I just kind of went back and put in what I had read in January and February, and then started from March, I think. But at the front of the journal, it has this bingo card, and it's not really part of my original plan in terms of my goals. However, as just for fun, I've been filling it out, and I've only got one spot left on the bingo card, which is book with 600 plus pages. So I think I'm gonna read The Overstory. I really want to read it. It's just intimidating. A book over 600 pages is intimidating, no matter which way you look at it. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it before the end of the year, and then I can finish my entire bingo card, which is I'm excited about for weird completionist brain reasons, and also finish that challenge. So I'm quite excited about The Overstory, but yeah, that's probably in November, but definitely one I'm going to try and read as soon as I can. So I'm not going to put that in this stack. It's not technically an October read. The other books that I have to read for the challenge, I don't have physical copies of. They are books that I am going to be reading on my secondhand Kindle. So I've got two. One is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, which is from the Reading Classic Books Challenge. So I'm just reading from my notes here. Reading Classic Books Challenge, a classic not by a Global North author. I had never heard the term Global North before. I suspected and was correct about what it means. And essentially it's, if you're a Global North country is a country in the sort of it's like England, USA, I guess was the original thought, hence North. Essentially it's just powerful countries, mostly white people sort of countries, essentially. But it's global North rather than a geographic North, because some of those countries are in the geographic South, like Australia, where I live. So global North is, so not a Global North author would be someone from another place. So the author of this book is a Nigerian, and this book was originally published in 1958 and then released in the UK in 1962. Interestingly, he wrote it in English, which there has been some controversy about, I'm led to believe, but I find that quite interesting. And he has some things to say. So when I've read that, perhaps we'll talk a little bit more about that, but let's move on. The other one is the final book from my 1921 and 2021 challenge, which is a non-fiction, a work of non-fiction published in 1921. And I've selected How to Analyse People on Sight by Elsie Lincoln Benedict and Ralph Paine Benedict. Not so much because it was super interesting, but when I looked at the books, the non-fiction books that I could find that were published in 1921, it seemed short and the most interesting out of the pick. So I've left the one I'm not looking forward to the end, which is classic me, to be honest. But that's what's happened. So yeah, once I've read those ones, I am going to be done with my challenges, which I'm super excited about, that I've only got to read 4 more books and I will be done with all of those challenges that I set for myself at the beginning of the year. So since then, I have also joined some read-alongs and book clubs and other such booky things. So I've got some other books that I do need to get to this month. So the first one, after Kafka on the Shore, of course, is Mansfield Park. And this is part of my Jane Austen read-along, where we're reading the books in publishing order. So I've already read Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice, and this is the third one, Mansfield Park. I cannot remember what the plot of this one is, so I'm going to just try and go in blind, basically, and see how I like it. I can't actually remember whether I've read this one before. I've either read this one or Northanger Abbey. I owned both of these before I got this nice set for my birthday from my husband. Thank you. So I have a nice set of all 6 of the Austen only published books. It doesn't have the one that was finished by somebody else, the unfinished Austen novel that got finished by someone else, but the ones that were just written by Austen, it's got. Anyway, I owned Mansfield Park and Northanger Abbey prior to that in a different edition, but I can't remember if I read this one or Northanger Abbey or both. So we'll find out. It's a little journey that we'll be taking this month when we read Mansfield Park. The next one is for my book club, and it's a book club where we're reading books from different countries around the world, which is a super exciting thing. You'll remember that if you watch my previous video, that last month we read a book from China that I straight up hated, did not like. So I'm crossing my fingers that this book is going to be more of a winner for me. It's a book from Hungary, and it's called Journey by Moonlight. I don't think I can pronounce the author's surname. His first name is Antal, Szerb. Don't know how to pronounce that, and I'm not even going to try. Journey by Moonlight is basically about a man who is on his honeymoon. He's gone to Italy, and then his life basically starts falling apart. And I believe he sort of ends up it's like I'm trying to find myself kind of situation. So I'm quite interested to read this. I think it's going to be good. My fingers are crossed that it's going to be good after the disaster of last month. But yeah, I'm excited to read this one for my Around the World book club. So that is the third one that I'm definitely going to get to in October. The other one I'm definitely going to get to in October is this one, because I'm already halfway through it. And if you watch my previous video, I mentioned that I was halfway through Transcendent Kingdom by Gyasi. Loving it so far, and I hope that the second half is going to be just as good. So I will be definitely finishing Transcendent Kingdom. Also, the book that I finished earlier this month, that I think I mentioned towards the beginning of this video, or maybe I didn't. Anyway, I finished an audiobook. So I started a new one, and it's called Islands of Decolonial Love by Leanne Simpson. It's a debut book from this author, and it is a collection of short stories, and they are stories about First Nations peoples, and sort of these little vignettes, I guess, of things that are happening and relationships and it's interesting. I'm really enjoying it so far. I definitely want to get back to it really soon because I'm really enjoying it, but I haven't had an audiobook moment since I began it. So I'm keen to get back to that because the first few short stories that I've listened to so far have been fascinating to me and very well written. So I'm keen to finish that one. Okay, so those are the ones that I'm definitely going to read this month. Then we get on to some others that are hopefullys, I guess we'll call them. And I'm just going to artfully cover up the nakedy nudeness on the front of this cover. This is the yellow wallpaper, and it is by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. It was first published in 1892, so it's been around for a while. And I heard about this one over on the Book Leo channel. So I will pop a link in the description to that, to the video, hopefully, if I can find it, otherwise just to the channel, where she recommended this book that she came across when she was, I feel like, shopping in Paris. Hopefully that'll help me to find find the video. But I got myself a copy of it. Unfortunately, mine's not as pretty as hers, but this is okay. It's just a bit nude. So essentially this story is, they're calling it a feminist classic, which I find really fascinating given that it was published in 1892. And essentially what happens is a woman gives birth and then seems to go into some kind of a psychosis following the birth, or is having some difficulties, maybe even. It might not even be a psychosis, I'm not sure. And she's ordered to be confined in this yellow bedroom to rest and pull herself together. And of course, being confined to a room, she just goes slowly crazy. And it's the patterns on the yellow wallpaper that kind of are what worm their way into her mind and kind of prompt, or not prompt, the confinement is what's prompting it, but they kind of are the beginnings of, or like the way that she kind of traces her descent into what they're calling madness. So yeah, I'm really keen to read that. It's a short story. It's very thin, as you can see. So yeah, I figured I can get to this because it's short. It's only, that's notes afterwards. So 59 pages. It's quite short. So I figured I could get to it. So that's what I'm hoping to do. That's it. My first, hopefully, for the month. Then an exciting late addition to my TBR. So over on the Books and Jams channel, which again I'll link to in the description, she was going through the books that she had selected for what's called the BookTube Spin. And this is the 4th time BookTube Spin has been run, so it's BookTube Spin 4. I had never heard of this. It sounded fascinating to me. So essentially what you do is you select 20 books, you note them down with numbers, which I did over on my Instagram. So if you're not already following me on Instagram and you want to, the link will be below. But yeah, so I put my list of 20 books, and the way I themed my 20 books was I went around my shelves and selected books that I had been really excited about and had either paid full price for or had gone out of my way to acquire in some way. But I had subsequently, when they arrived, they sat on my shelf just gathering dust. So that was my theme. It didn't take me long to find 20 books. I'm not going to lie. Didn't even look through my entire collection. We got a lot of books in this house, but we don't judge. We love books in this house, so it's okay. Anyway, I found my 20 books. I noted them down. Now, the person who hosts this channel is Rick McDonnell, and he is I'll link to his channel as well, and I will link specifically to the announcement video for the challenge, and also the spin. So if you don't want to know what the numbers were, I won't tell you. You can do that yourself if you want to take part. It's not too late. It has already been drawn, but it's not too late to start because it's still the beginning of October. So basically what happens is he's got a randomized spinner. He spins the wheel and then a number comes up. And we did 2 spins. So the first spin is a must read, and the second is an optional read. I was just really excited by this challenge. And as I was watching the video, waiting for the spins, I was so excited because I literally wanted to read every single book that I had selected. There are no duds in this selection at all. So I was super keen for all of these books. Anyway, so the first spin happened, and my winning book was Tender Morsels by Margo Lanagan. Margo Lanagan is an Australian author, and I believe she lives in New South Wales, which is where I am. So yeah, I had heard about this book and I got a secondhand copy of it, but I went out of my way to acquire this secondhand copy of Tender Morsels. I was really excited by it. So yeah, when this book came up on the spin, I was so excited. It was probably one of the oldest books that I had in my list of 20. So I was super keen to get this one done. Which is a ridiculous thing. It's like I'm just tricking my mind. I know that because I've owned this book for like 10 years. So I could have read it at any time. But somehow doing the wheel made me more excited about it. So yeah, super happy that this was the winner. So Tender Morsels is, and I'll just read a tiny bit about that from the blurb on the back. It's a dark and vivid story set in two worlds and worrying at the border between them. It is a gloriously told tale of journeys and transformations penetrating the boundaries between male and female, reality and myth, nature and magic, conscious and unconscious, temporal and spiritual, human and beast. So essentially we've got a main character who has traded her earthly life to live in her own personal heaven. She has two daughters who grow up in this place, and they're protected from the sort of the negative aspects of reality in the world. But of course, you can't deny the real world forever, and the borders begin to break down, and sort of then action ensues. So yeah, I'm super keen to get to this one. It sounds super interesting. As I said, it's been sitting on my shelf for maybe 10 years, and I was so excited to get it. I remember being so excited to find this copy of Tender Morsels because I'd read about it and it sounded super interesting. So yeah, I'm going to be reading this I'm planning to read it in October. I'm hopeful that I'll be able to get it done in October. If not finished, at least begun. So that was my first spin. And then my second spin was a non-fiction, and it's Joni Mitchell, in her own words, Conversations with Malka Marom. I'm a massive Joni Mitchell fan, and have been for maybe 20 years. I love her music, and anyway, I could go on. I'm not going to. Just suffice to say, I love Joni Mitchell. Malka Marom is a musician herself and is also a journalist. So this is essentially transcripts of interviews that she's done with Joni Mitchell. She met her back in the 60s, watched her perform in a cafe somewhere, and then maybe 5 to 10 years later, in her role as a journalist, got to interview her, and they've developed a friendship over the years. So what I'm hoping for is that these conversations are going to have a level of intimacy and will sort of reveal some interesting things about Joni Mitchell's work and her life. I can't wait. Again, tricking my own brain. I have owned this book for maybe 3 or 4 years. I could have read it at any time, but it came up in the spin. Definitely going to get to this before the end of the year. So I don't think this will be October, but maybe November or December. So again, I won't pop that one on the pile, but here it is. That is my TBR plus my couple of books on my Kindle, and also the audiobook that I am reading at the moment. So have you read any of these books? Keen to hear your thoughts if so. No spoilers, of course. Are you interested in any of these books? Please feel free to comment down below. And thank you again for stopping by. And for those who've subscribed already, thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this video and you would like to hear more, Please feel free to subscribe if you'd like. So yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.